Chapter 1 Orienting. Orient, verb, from the Oxford English Dictionary. To bring into a defined relationship with known facts, circumstances, etc. To give orientation or bearings to, frequently reflexive, to put oneself in the right position or relation, to ascertain one's bearings, become familiar with one's situation. Also, to give a specific direction or tendency to, chiefly with to or towards. You are about to enter unfamiliar territory. Habits of the Creative Mind isn't like any other book that has ever been written about the learning how to write. We don't claim that there's only one way to write or one set of steps in the writing process or one fill-in-the-blank formula for every writing situation. We don't try to sell you on the idea that writing is fun and easy if you just know the right tricks. And we don't narrow our focus to the modes of writing typically assigned in college, persuasion and argumentation. Our work on this book began with the premise that the best writing develops from the exercise of habits of mind that include curiosity, creativity, attentiveness, openness to new ideas, persistence, flexibility, and reflectiveness. Starting with this premise compelled us to rethink what writing is for and how writing can best be taught. As you'll see throughout Habits, we insist that writing is a technology for thinking new thoughts, and that the only way your writing will serve this function is through deliberate practice of the myriad mental activities, the habits of mind that make creativity possible. We know this is disorienting, so we've written 3 essays to help you get your bearings. On Finding Your Feet offers our thoughts about the lifelong consequences of equating education with test-taking. On Habits distinguishes between writing memos or reports for one's job and using writing as a technology for thinking new thoughts. Finally, On Thinking New Thoughts provides a set of examples of how real writers create conditions that help them return again and again to the challenge of exploring the unknown. On Finding Your Feet. "Curiouser and curiouser," cried Alice. She was so much surprised that for the moment she quite forgot how to speak good English. "Now I'm opening out like the largest telescope that ever was. Goodbye, feet!" For when she looked down at her feet, they seemed to be almost out of sight. They were getting so far off. Alice's adventures in Wonderland begins with our heroine having nothing to do. It's not that Alice is alone. She's with her sister and could choose to do what her sister is doing, reading silently. But the book her sister is reading doesn't interest Alice because it has no pictures or dialogue. Alice has a problem. She's bored. The resources we have for relieving boredom were not available to Lewis Carroll's Alice 150 years ago. She can't text a friend or stream her favorite videos out there on the grass. Uninterested in reading, Alice lies in the sun trying to get up the energy to pick some daisies when a rabbit wearing a waistcoat runs by. In an instant, Alice is transformed. Burning with curiosity, she races after the rabbit, commencing the adventures in Wonderland that continue to attract readers to this day. How does this happen? The jump from idling in listless boredom to embarking on a curiosity-driven exploration of the unknown. Both as writing teachers and as parents, we have heard a lot about boredom. The assigned readings are boring. The writing assignments are boring. School is boring. No one willingly seeks out boredom. It's just out there, waiting to overwhelm the idle. And once you are bored, then everything is boring. Look at Alice. The rabbit runs by her, and at first she thinks nothing of it. Indeed, she doesn't even think it so very much out of the way to hear the rabbit say to itself, oh dear, I shall be too late." A talking rabbit? Whatever. It's not until the rabbit stops and looks at his pocket watch that Alice snaps out of her torpor, jumps to her feet, and, in an act that has since entered the language as a synonym for plunging into another world, goes down the rabbit hole. There is, of course, no such thing as a talking, waistcoat wearing, pocket watch checking rabbit. The sister sitting on the bank, the book without pictures, the rabbit hole. These ordinary, one might even say boring, things are made extraordinary by Lewis Carroll's creation of a world of wonder. How did he do it? How does any writer make the jump from being bored and boring to being creative? From writing sentences no one would willingly read to thinking thoughts of interest to others. Habits of the Creative Mind is based on a simple premise. No one wants either to be bored or to be boring. Entire industries are founded on this premise. Show business, video gaming, the 24-hour news cycle, gambling, online shopping, theme parks, social media, wine and spirits. These industries keep boredom at bay by offering entertainment in one form or another. But as soon as the entertainment comes to an end, the ever-present threat of being bored makes itself felt again. Education, properly understood, isn't in the entertainment business. Its job is to encourage students to cultivate creative and curious habits of mind. And these habits, in turn, make the world shimmer with possibility. Nothing is inherently interesting. Not the weeping willow in the park, or the lecture on global warming, or the Monet water lily painting hanging in the gallery, or the rabbit scampering into the bushes. Everything in the material world of objects and in the immaterial world of ideas can be tuned out, mocked, or trivialized. Everything we experience through our senses or gain access to with our minds can be dismissed by someone else as boring. So nothing is inherently interesting, but everything, from the ways single-celled bacteria communicate to the back-channel chatter in the brain, to the evanescent patterns made when smoke rises from a candle's flame, has the potential to be made interesting. The mind can be trained to transform what would otherwise seem mundane and unremarkable into an opportunity for thoughtful reflection. We can make the world interesting to ourselves and to others through sustained acts of attention. And we can gain access to curiosity and creativity through deliberate, thoughtful practice. We've written this book to provide ways for you to learn how to make the world a more interesting place and how to make your interests of interest to others. For this to happen, you will need to cultivate a sense that what is unknown is exciting, and you will need to become more comfortable with uncertainty and with ambiguous outcomes. Taking pleasure in confronting the limits of one's own understanding does not come naturally to anyone. We all avoid situations where our ignorance might be exposed, our faulty reasoning brought to light, our reliance on myth, hearsay, and family lore disclosed. This shared tendency to keep what we don't know hidden is precisely why practicing being attentive, curious, and creative is essential. It's a way of confronting, engaging with, and responding to the unknown. A commitment to working at the edge of one's own understanding is, we maintain, what lies at the heart of the educational enterprise. There can be no consequential learning without such a commitment. In this book, we focus on writing as one way to practice the encounter with the unknown, but, as you'll see, we understand writing to encompass more than just typing words into a computer. In fact, we often use the word composing to emphasize our sense that writing is an ongoing act of making sense of the world, an act that necessarily involves working with sounds and images, perceptions and intuitions, and everything else in the realm of experience that shapes both what and how we think. That said, we do maintain that there's an important distinction between informal personal writing and public writing about ideas. Most of us don't need help posting the events of the day to Instagram or spinning memories into anecdotes that amuse our friends, because we've had years of practice talking and thinking about ourselves and the events, big and small, that have taken place in our lives. Few of us have a comparable amount of practice writing about ideas, practice that depends on cultivating the mind's connective powers. But once you start writing about ideas, you will find that the experience can end up leading you to think new thoughts. And those new thoughts can open up new worlds for you to explore. To use writing in this way is to use it as a technology for thinking new thoughts. If you practice the approaches to writing we present in Habits of the Creative Mind until they become your own habits of mind, you will have achieved the two highest goals of a liberal arts education. You will have put yourself on the path to being a lifelong learner, and you will have learned how to engage with the world beyond the narrow compass of the self. Getting started on this adventure requires three things: a desire to better understand yourself and your place in the world, access to writing materials and the internet, and a commitment to making time for the work of cultivating curiosity, creativity, and learning. Habits of the Creative Mind provides you with a structure and a host of activities and prompts to help you practice writing about ideas. But you have to meet the project halfway by being open to the possibility that using writing to explore your mind's connective powers can help you both to think new thoughts and to think those thoughts in new ways. We know that skepticism is an inevitable part of the process of thinking about ideas that are strange or unfamiliar, so we expect you to be skeptical along the way. But it is up to you to keep that skepticism in check so that you don't become dismissive as soon as you find yourself being asked to think in new ways about what thinking is and about what it means to be a thoughtful person. We're not asking for a lot. If you've ever found yourself wishing that you understood the world a little better, or that you had a clearer sense of how to make the world a better place, then you're as open as you need to be to give our approach to writing a try. Practice session 1, Alice's feet. Habits: connecting, exploring, orienting. Activities: engaging with sources, reading, researching. In this essay's opening passage, Alice is having trouble finding her feet. This fact is unlikely to make any sense if you're not familiar with Alice in Wonderland. So, one way to find your own feet as a reader is to learn more about Carol's book. You might choose to go to Wikipedia, of course, but we're always more interested in going directly to the original source when possible. And as it happens, you'll have no trouble finding Alice in Wonderland online. Read the first 2 chapters with care. Then consider the following questions. What does it mean for Alice to find her feet in Wonderland? What work have you had to do as a reader to put yourself into, to find your feet in, Carol's story? What does finding your feet have to do with orienting yourself as a reader? And as a writer? Take 30 minutes to write up your definition of what finding your feet with a text means. Make sure to detail the steps involved in this process. Practice session 2, reading Montaigne in French, even if you've never studied French. Habits: connecting, orienting, paying attention. Activities: list making, note taking, reading. The 16th century French nobleman Michel de Montaigne is credited with inventing the essay, but his version of the essay has little in common with the essays typically assigned in school today. He called his writings essays, meaning attempts. They were not arguments or proclamations, but personal reflections that explored what he knew and what he thought. Montaigne's short essay, How Our Mind Tangles Itself Up, appears both in its original French and in an English translation at the end of this book, pages 268 through 69. First, read the translation. Next, look carefully at the original essay and consider what the English translator has done to help the contemporary reader make sense of Montaigne's writing. Without knowing any French or Latin, you should be able to list at least 4 steps the translator has taken to increase the likelihood that the meaning of Montaigne's essay survives the journey to the present day. Spend at least 20 minutes gathering your thoughts on the differences between how Montaigne's original essay attempts to orient the reader and how the contemporary translation attempts to do the same. You might begin by looking at how both the writer and his translator use white space on the page.